So today we're here with EduFirst's very own Baylie and Mr. Norwood, our old history teacher from school. How are you doing?
I'm very well. Honoured to be here. Thank you very much for having me.
No worries. I feel weird. Obviously, it's been 4 or 5 years since we left school now.
Yeah.
So to call you like Mr. Norwood and Sir still feels like it feels right, you know.
This morning we were like, do we call him by his name? Do we say sir?
And I was like, yep, I'm calling him Sir.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're all good. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Yeah, it's a nice day.
Yeah.
It's lovely to be here in your amazing studios. Lovely to be speaking to you guys. It's been a very long time in some ways, but in some ways it feels like it was just yesterday.
Honestly.
that We're in a history classroom, so it's lovely to be here.
Honestly, we were walking here and we saw a house that said like Wolsey House or something, and we was thinking that
Thomas Wolsey.
Thomas Wolsey
Mr.
from school.
What's that?
There you go.
Yeah. But so tell us a bit about what you do now. Like, obviously, you used to be our history teacher full time, but that's not the case anymore.
Yeah, that's right. So I am still a teacher. So I teach at the school that you guys went to, and I teach there part-time, teaching history. And I also run a charity called Right Back, and we work with young people in the area around the school in Barking and Dagenham, and we work with those young people to help them tell their own stories, building up their self-confidence, their self-esteem, through giving them the chance to tell their own story. Yeah. And that's a project, as you will know, that came out of yourselves, people in your year group who started to tell their own stories. So it feels, really humbling to be back here with you guys, talking with you and about that journey, which you guys were there at the start for.
Yeah, no, definitely.
A long time ago.
A long time ago, it turns out.
Yep.
I think that's really good. Throughout the community, giving young people a voice as well. I think that's something EduFirst as well always tries to touch upon, to give people a voice to make change. So honestly, I think it's a really good initiative that you're doing.
Yeah, I think what's good about it as well is that like we've personally experienced you having an impact on our lives. So the fact that we're now seeing that, and you being able to do that to other children as well, like still after years since leaving school, I think it's lovely.
100%.
Right, thank you. Well, similarly, it's such a pleasure and an honour to see you guys and all of your team at EduFirst go on to make the difference that you are making. And yeah, what an inspiration that, it took me till, I'm not going to reveal how old I am now, but it took me until a much more advanced age than you guys are to set up a charity and to do some of this charitable work. And the stuff that you guys have done already is so impressive to see. So the pleasure is mine.
Thank you. But yeah, like as Baylie was saying, the impact you had on us personally, it was like, look at me stuttering. It was so great. So I think being a teacher, you guys almost have this role of a role on your shoulders of delivering impact to children and changing their lives. How did that make you feel as being a teacher? Did you ever feel pressured at having that responsibility or having that role?
Yeah, it is a mad job in lots of ways, but it's such a rewarding position to be in, and to work with young people. It means that your job is different every single day. It means that you are continuously learning. There's no kind of resting on your laurels. You do just have to keep learning and adapting. But it's such a privilege to be in a position where you can work with so many people and in however a small way be part of the foundation that then sets them up for all the amazing things that they're going to go on to do. And as a teacher, it's rare to actually see really all of the kind of the products of that. You wave goodbye at like 16 or 18, wherever it is, on a boat party, at a leavers do, at the last assembly, and you wish everyone good luck. So it's been such a wonderful experience to see you guys, or like all the things that you guys have gone on to do, and that has been in its own way so rewarding. And to have been there for bits of that journey feels like a real privilege to do in both of your cases and in everyone in EduFirst.
So we're talking about impact for us, but what impacted you? What did you have any role models to become a teacher? What was your almost influence in becoming a teacher?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think a few things really. So I come from like a family of teachers. So my parents taught in different ways, and my grandparents on my mum's side were both teachers, history teachers. So that was kind of a big like formative moment, I would say, for me. It weirdly, like, because I did something called Teach First, so I was like allocated to the school that I taught you guys in, but like in a weird coincidence, like my granddad like grew up for a bit of his childhood like not very far away from the school, so it kind of felt right. It felt right, yeah. But so definitely kind of family influences. And I also just had some incredible history teachers when I was at school, like completely bonkers people who just brought such life and joy. I like, in my best days as a teacher, I'm trying to like pay back all of the wonderful joy for the past and for history that they have given me. But I remember like one of my history teachers, like I have a little cupboard where I keep my costumes. And that's, you know, it's got some good hats. I'm not going to lie. There are some good hats.
Them.
Yeah.
You have worn them yourselves many a time. But like my history teacher had like a walk-in wardrobe of like history costumes and would occasionally just come out partway through the lesson completely attired. Henry VIII. I remember like a Roman emperor. She dressed up, I think her best one was as Rasputin. She like appeared in like a full brown monk's robe and a bushy beard, and then conducted the rest of the lesson as Rasputin, which I don't think I will ever forget. So I think I was really lucky that I had so many people who showed me how important the past can be and how important teaching could be. So I was really lucky to to be able to kind of follow in those footsteps, I think.
Yeah, I think you definitely passed that on, because I remember the classes were just so fun. There was no other class like that, like doing the things that you were doing, the activities that we were doing. No other teacher was doing that. That's why I wasn't enjoying those classes. Like, you're literally the reason that I picked history for A-level. Aww. I wasn't going to do it. And I was like, but I can have Mr. Norwood for another 2 years. So I was like, yeah, I'll do history. And I think, like, obviously we're saying that now, but I think there's so many other students that you taught that would say the same thing. And just those little things like wearing a costume or the hats that you had, the many hats, can make such a difference. And, like, I feel like that can really help capture the students and their engagement. I think... yeah, that's something I'll always remember, is just your lessons and how crazy they were.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, definitely. I think like in school, many students have like different experiences. But from like a personal point of view, there was like education in a whole, it wasn't always engaging. There's some parts of education that's not engaging. There's some lessons that, you know, you get taught and you don't really want to learn specific things. But having a teacher like yourself who actually has that impact on young people is so important, because it actually makes them want to do those lessons. It makes them want to be engaged and makes them want to learn, which obviously is the most important thing about education, is, you know, young people learning and actually becoming educated. So, yeah, man, that's really cool.
Well, I'm really flattered that you think so. I think probably for most students there are, you know, different things that work for different people as well, and I'm lucky to work with loads of incredible teachers who have like who are all so different and do very different things. And I think that's one of the things that's great about school, is that people can be exposed to loads of different ideas, loads of different people, and I'm lucky that I've been able to work somewhere where I can develop my own style and do my own kind of things. But there are also teachers doing things that are really different, that are having such a huge impact on students in a completely different approach. Yeah. And so, yeah, I think it's, different strokes for different folks.
Yeah, true.
But yeah, thank you. I feel like I'm going to cry. That won't come across well on a podcast, I don't think. You just hear sort of quite sobbing in the background. Okay, I'll try and do that. No promises.
Yeah. So in terms of the pandemic, how did that affect your teaching?
That was mad. Yeah. It's one of those things, obviously, that in some ways just feels like another lifetime ago. Mm-hmm. I mean, I feel like in the UK, most things feel like a lifetime ago. Like I feel like what happened yesterday.
Yeah.
Feels like
I
a
can't
lifetime
remember what
ago.
happened
Like,
for dinner yesterday.
who is Prime Minister? I mean, what's going on?
Who
I
knows?
mean, who knows anymore? So it feels like a long time ago, but it was, such a weird time. And I think everyone was kind of scrambling around to try and find solutions, trying to work out ways in which we could teach young people. But there was just so little support. And I think this is something that you guys have been, doing so much work on, is about how, we're lucky to have in the UK like a free for all education system that is essential to how our country can work. But as we know, people's experience of the school system is vastly shaped by their economic situations. And that was just like thrown into such sharp relief by COVID. It got a bit better in the second lockdown. Yeah. There was some more resources for people who didn't have access to the internet or computers. Some more, but if I'm honest, it was a drop in the ocean compared to the need. Yeah. And I do think it was really scandalous that more was not done to try and, transition more young people to have the resources to engage with that learning, because now back in the classroom after the pandemic, it's really clear that the divides and the gaps within the students are broader, because some of them have had resources, some of them have had, their facilities at home and like the time of parents and other siblings and stuff to really help them. And some of them haven't had those opportunities. And that affected like 2 years of their education. Mm. I mean, so it was a massive upheaval, I think. And I think we won't really see all of the consequences of that for another few years. Yeah. But I mean, you guys in different ways were studying and at the same time, I'm interested to see what it was like from your perspective.
Yeah, so for me, COVID took place in the first 2 years at uni.
Right.
Yeah, which was
not
fun.
Ideal.
No, not at all. So that was like a weird experience, because I lived at home at uni as well, because it wasn't that far away. So I think if I had lived at uni, it would have been different. But I think because I was at home, I was online, I didn't really make that many friendships. I didn't get the uni experience. And I think my engagement was just so low, because I was like, I could go to my lecture online, or I could just put it on in the background, lay in bed, put Netflix on, maybe nap. Right. So I think that was quite hard. I think after a few weeks, I started to get used to it, but it was definitely hard. And then the fact that we'd go back to uni, or there'd be talks of, all right, guys, we're going to come back in. And then they're like, oh, never mind, another lockdown. So it was like, oh, we're going. No, we're not. It was very stop and start. And then it wasn't until my third year that we actually went back full time in lessons, which was in those 2 years, so much can change. So for me, I can't imagine being a secondary school student and having that experience, missing out on 2 years. I think, and my brother had it was his last 2 years at secondary school, and I think there's definitely you can tell that year group
is different.
Yeah, in a nice way, Andre, if you're watching this. Sorry, in a nice way. But I think you can definitely tell that the people,
same as my brother and sister.
Same age, yeah.
Yeah, so I think even for me, obviously, I went to uni for a little bit, but I wasn't engaged at all, and I wasn't enjoying it, and I actually dropped out. And luckily found something else that I enjoy more now. But it was tough, I think, for everybody. I think from a teacher's point of view, was it tough for you? Did you have to change your style of teaching?
Yeah, because your classes are so we were saying with the hats.
Yeah, how did you?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a weird situation where the expectations were really unclear as well. So there were times where we were delivering online lessons, and there were times where we were posting resources. So, but all the stuff that you actually enjoy about teaching is the being in the classroom, is the working with people, is the seeing the engagement in a classroom, and you don't have that. And even when we did do some online lessons, just teaching to a sea of black screens is just the most dispiriting thing you can ever imagine. Because I know I make terrible jokes at the best of times, but when you say a terrible joke and then it's just like a sea of blank walls and there's like no response at all, you're like, this is bad.
Yeah.
So I, if I'm honest, I really struggled to find a way of doing some of that teaching. I mean, some of the students were absolutely incredible. They went, I don't know how they managed to do it, but they went above and beyond to try and to learn when effectively they were having to teach themselves. It was such a eye-opening moment as to what these students were capable of doing. But it was a weird time to teach. But I just feel so sorry as well that you guys lost out on those experiences. In the end, it worked out well for you in that like you ended up doing something that you preferred to do. But that's not a university experience that either of you anticipated. Certainly not the university experiences that you expected when you signed up to the student loans company and agreed to pay tuition fees. And it seems, outrageous that went for a university experience when so much of the stuff that I loved about uni was the meeting other people, that kind of social element of it too. So it's such a huge impact.
Do you think that if we were to go into another lockdown again?
Oh, Baylie, please.
I mean, don't want to jinx it or anything. Really
touch
try to
wood.
not jinx it. But do you think if we were, the world would be a bit more, like they'd have more of an idea of how to do it in terms of education? Do you think we'd be more prepared? There'd be more resources, or you think no?
I like to consider myself an optimist, but I actually don't think I am about this. I don't really think we have learnt that many lessons.
Yeah.
I think really what the pandemic revealed right across society in education, but in almost every single walk of life, is the vast inequalities that exist within this country.
Yeah.
And they were just like blown up on a huge canvas by the pandemic. People were talking about it before, obviously, but I think the pandemic just shone a huge light on it. And what actually has been done since then to address those things? Nothing really, nothing tangible that's really actually helped to address some of those inequalities. So if we were to go back into another lockdown, and I really
fingers crossed,
I can't express like the level of like dread that gives me, then I have no confidence that we would be in a better position in terms of the resources that would be there to help those people who would have least access to these resources. So it's a sort of kind of scary thought that after such a huge shock to the system, right, schools had not been that disrupted since World War II, that there couldn't be more thought about how we engage. And also, like, I mean, this is something that you guys were talking about on a previous podcast, but you know, there was obviously, for the first time in a very long time, huge disruption to the exam system. And that could have provoked a debate as to what we wanted to happen next in terms of exams and what would have been a good option for students. And I'm sure that would have been a messy debate, and probably everyone in this room will have like different shades of opinion about what could replace it. But none of that has really happened. There's been actually none of the conversations about what we've learned from.
They've just kind of fallen back into their old,
the
old regime.
Right, exactly. And that, I think, is such a crazy missed opportunity to actually sit and reflect, what do we want this education system to look like?
Yeah.
That was a very depressing, bleak answer.
Yeah.
Sorry, but it was a depressing, bleak question.
It's
true.
Yeah.
So I gave you what you said. So
to flip it around, away from the depressingness, what would you say your favorite memory, if you have a favorite, or one of your favorite memories of being a teacher has been?
Oh. No pressure to say teaching us. No pressure.
Yeah, well, I've loved teaching, apart from these two students I had to teach for years, and I just couldn't get rid of them.
We even stayed after GCSEs.
There've been so many. I think one of the things that has really made such a huge difference to my life has been the kind of the process of sharing stories that started when your year group was in year 9, and like some of the stories that so the lesson that it happened from was a lesson where I was meant to be teaching. I travelled over from one side of the school to the other side of the school. I got there and I was trying to like set up the computer, and the computer was broken. I think Lookman was there at this point, so you may remember moving across to find another classroom that we could possibly get a computer working in. It was one of those sort of lessons. Then I went to another room and the computer didn't work in that room. And so we had to just freestyle the lesson. And we started by talking about people's experience of migration and whether they had any knowledge or experience of that topic or they had any connections. And I'll never forget how incredible the response was, with so many incredible stories that just came through on so many different ways. There were stories that took us like around the world. There were stories that were really, really local to where we were in the school. There were stories about people themselves. There's a story about people's parents, grandparents. There were just these incredible stories. And I think for me, the best thing about teaching is actually weirdly not really the teaching. It's when you actually just get a chance to listen and hear the perspectives, the stories of young people. So I would say it was that process of like revelation and realization that has been one of the highlights of teaching, alongside some fairly phenomenal students included in present company. It's been a fantastic experience. Lots of really fantastic things.
Yeah.
See, I mean, it goes to show you, like, so many young people have a voice and so many young people want to actually talk, but, you know, we don't. I felt like, you know, back in the day, I didn't really get many opportunities to talk about, you know, well, my situations, or, you know, I think it's good to give them an opportunity to speak. So
yeah. So what made you make the jump from obviously teaching full time to going part time and starting up your charity?
Yeah. It was a big jump actually, and it happened at the same time that you guys left. So it was when you guys left at the end of year 13 was my last year being full time at the school. And that's partly really because the project, which had taken different shapes over a number of years, had kind of grown up with your year group. So it started off with a book when you guys were in year 9 about migration, really, and different stories from around the world. Then it went to thinking about more like stereotypes and labels. And then then there were some workshops and things that were being delivered for students younger in the school, some exhibitions that took place at different galleries across East London. And it kind of got to the end of your guys' final year of school, and like I knew that this was something really special that the young people in your cohort had created, and I wanted that to be able to continue in some way. And so really the kind of the charity grew out of that experience in the school. So at that point I was able to reach out to an amazing new youth centre in Barking and Dagenham called Future Youth Zone, which offers just an incredible provision for young people from right across Barking and Dagenham. And it felt like right place, right time. They had recently just opened, and so I decided to take the plunge to go part-time to work with the school that I'd been working in, but also other local schools from across Barking and Dagenham. And then those schools all refer young people to the youth centre, and then together we work on creating these books. That was a long, rambling story, but it wasn't a genius plan concocted in a moment and kind of acted upon. It was something that grew out of all of the work of so many young people, including you and all of the people in your year group, that then led to it becoming a charity. So it's something that really I felt like I was more a custodian of, like I was looking after a project that wasn't mine in a way, like it was a project that had grown organically from young people's stories, and I had the privilege of being able to help a new generation of young people tell their stories.
Yeah, I feel like that's a sign though that everything kind of aligned. The fact that we were finishing sixth form the same year, the fact that the youth centre had just opened up, I think it was meant to be.
Yeah, I often don't think like that, but I really do think that way about this. And even like small things, like the youth centre is just opposite from like the house my granddad lived in when he was 11, and just
Another sign.
just small things, you know, you're like, this feels right. So definitely I've landed on my feet. Although, as you guys will know, running a charity in a pandemic is a weird one. Turns out that, you know, when I set it up this was like September 2019, I was like, brilliant, here we go. And then March 2020 had other ideas.
Throws a spanner.
Turns out. So it's been a bumpy ride at times, but it's definitely been an exciting one too.
Yeah. See, I wasn't a part of EduFirst in the pandemic, and I'm kind of glad I wasn't, because I don't think I would have been able to cope.
You set up your own business in the pandemic.
Yeah, true.
So, I mean,
you know exactly the pain.
Yeah, it's hard. I think the pandemic just like hit so many people differently, but it's nice to see that something good has come of it, and you've been able to use it like to your advantage and to survive the pandemic. Like, you could have stopped, you could have been like, do you know what, this isn't the right time, but you kept going. And through Instagram, what you've been posting, I can see that you're getting a lot of kids that are going, and they seem like they're having fun, and you're just doing amazing stuff. So it's lovely to see.
Thank you.
What's like your goal with Right Back? Where do you want to take it? What's like, not the end goal, because there shouldn't be an end, but where do you visualize it in the future?
5-year plan.
Yeah. Oh goodness. Now the questions really okay. Right Back really is based on the idea that every single young person has a story to tell. Thinking back to what you were saying, Jermaine, about how you felt like you often didn't get the opportunity to express yourself in school, I feel like that's part of the nature of the way in which schools have gone now, is that especially for teenagers who are kind of 14 onwards, the pressures on exams have only grown. I think and I think it's so sad to say this, but I would really, really hate to be a teenager today. I think the levels of pressure that are placed on them are much, much higher than when I was going to school. And that's because of an exam system that I just think has just grown and blossomed into this huge kind of monster, which has tentacles over every part of education. And the space for any of that creative expression is just so small. So in terms of a kind of vision for what I would love to see, I'd love every single young person to feel like they had a space where they can tell their story, where they have the ability to learn not just from teachers or from books or from their established curriculum, but learn from their peers. That, I think, is the goal, is the vision. And there's no reason why that vision of every young person being able to be heard is not relevant in every corner of this country and beyond. And I'm really interested in one of the amazing things that you guys do, is that your work is about education and about everyone's right to a good education. And that means thinking about education everywhere from Somalia to Dagenham and worldwide, right? And so I'm not going to commit to a 5-year plan of global domination. But I do think that in whatever form, we just need to create more avenues for young people to express themselves.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Have you got one bit of advice that you would give to someone who is wanting to be a teacher?
Oh, great question. I would say it is really tough. It is going to be a difficult ride, and there will be moments where you struggle with it, and where the positives seem to be outweighed by the negatives. I would say that to persevere, the benefits you get from doing something where you can see the impact on young people's lives, even if it is hard always to do that in the way that you want to do it, in the way you want to teach, is so great. And the value of being there for a young person when they need someone to be there for them is in some ways it sounds like a burden, but it's also a privilege to be able to be there for those people. So I would say go for it. Get yourself put your friends on like speed dial. You're going to need them. Buy some Kleenex, do some get some preparation for some difficult times.
Yeah.
But it's worth it.
Yeah.
And if we can, the more people there are in teaching who share a really ambitious vision of what teaching should be and what education should look like, then the more chance we have of actually affecting change in the education system itself.
Yeah.
So especially if you were disillusioned by aspects of your experience in school for whatever reason, in some ways, that's an even more important reason to go into school. Like if you didn't always have that positive experience in school, be that person who's going to change someone's experience in the classroom.
Yeah.
Be that person that you didn't have to change that experience. So go for it.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, that's very inspiring. I kind of want to be a teacher.
Do it. See you in the staff room.
Just one more thing before we got to wrap up. In terms of like the curriculum and the whole system in general, what do you think would be like the solution? Because I think there needs to be a solution to it. I feel like, as you said, the pressures for students right now are stupidly high. Like even for us, I remember 5 years ago they were high, but our little siblings are going through it now, and you know that it's tough. What do you think the solutions for that would be? What do you think the ideal almost system or curriculum would be to help solve that?
Oh,
sorry, I know it's a deep one. I know
the hard questions today. I love it. Well, at the moment, in the current climate, it seems plausible that maybe I will be the next education secretary. They've gone through, I think, 5 since August last year. So
it's possible.
You never know. Maybe we'll all get a chance to shape the education system. A big question. There are so many things, right? So many things that need to be done. Maybe I'll restrict myself to history, which is obviously the area that I teach. I think there have been some positive developments in the ways in which teachers, education bodies have recognised the limited, narrow visions of history that we teach and the ways in which that excludes so many experiences that aren't then reflected in the curriculum. And whether that's thinking about Black British history, or whether that's thinking about Asian history in the UK, or whether that's thinking about the history of empire and global histories, there are so many areas that need to be more adequately addressed in the curriculum. And I think it's really interesting that I think some of the places where those things are best addressed and where that work is being done most effectively is actually in the year groups that aren't being assessed in public exams. So I'm really proud of the changes and the work that's been going on in the department that I work in terms of their Key Stage 3 curriculum, so year 7 to 9, and the amazing schemes that we have on British civil rights, on migration, on decolonisation, on these really, really important issues that have often been marginalised in the curriculum. But it's really noticeable that when you get to year 10 and year 11 or year 12 and 13, the options to study those things in the exam boards are so much more limited. And because schools are strapped for cash and they don't have the investment in them that they need, they aren't going to take risks and buy all the textbooks they need for another unit that's new. Yeah. So for me, it kind of the crazy focus on exam culture and the narrowness of curriculum, including in history, I think are related in that an exam-only culture just seems to create also a very narrow, restricted curriculum. So we need to move beyond the exam model that we have, and we need to start having a public conversation, I think, a national conversation about the history that young people should know and what's going to actually equip them to be able to navigate the world we live in. But I mean, you guys are both students, like you have both been in that position. What would you change?
I would definitely I mean, I did all right with my history results anyway, like they could have been better, but they were good. But I think I would definitely be more engaged, and I think I probably would have done better on my exams if it kind of reflected like my history a bit more. So like you're saying, if we spoke about Black British culture and our history there, I think I would have been a bit more engaged because that's more of my history kind of thing. And I think a lot of people in our year group as well, we had quite a diverse year group, I think. And I think they would have been a bit more interested or maybe performed better in their exams because it would have reflected them. Like Windrush scandal, something that obviously isn't being mentioned, or I don't know now, I'm not a history student now, but at the time when we were at school, like it wasn't being mentioned. It was more like Henry VIII and his wives and stuff like that, or Russia. But I think, if the history being taught is reflecting the students a bit more, then I feel like they might perform better in their exams. But then again, I also think if I was in charge of education,
yes,
which I could be next week at this rate, I would probably like just change exams in themselves. I think for me, like I would get so anxious with my exams coming up. Like my room was like something from Stranger Things with like mind maps everywhere. I would get so anxious. And I think there's plenty of other students that are in the same position. So I think I think what I would change is less pressure of exams and maybe more like project-based kind of stuff, and a curriculum that reflects the students a bit more, I think.
I agree, and just adding on that, I think just giving students more choice, so like some students might be interested in Henry VIII and Russia, but I think if I don't know how possible logistically it is. Obviously, you'll have to have more teachers to teach different things, etc. But if, they said, okay, you're doing a history GCSE now, would you like to learn this, or this? And then you choose. And then would you like to do coursework or exam-based or something along those lines? Giving us more choice to be educated in the way like we actually want to be educated. Because I think something I've learned from going into uni and then doing an apprenticeship is different people learn in very different ways. Not everybody learns the exact same way. Not everybody, can do exams and that intense study, and not everybody can do coursework. So I think just giving students choice and allowing them to choose how they want to be educated would help, to be fair.
Yeah.
Well, if only you guys can be the next Secretary of State for Education. Put your name in the ring today.
Yeah, we've probably got a chance.
Yeah. But it was so lovely speaking to you today.
So lovely.
Yeah, thank you for coming on and talking about some really important topics, and it was really good to hear about Right Back as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you guys, and keep up the amazing work that you guys are doing. It's been such a lovely thing to be able to watch this grow and develop. So thank you very much for having me.
I'm gonna cry. The tears are coming.